I mean, I think the way I would characterize it is this is just Putin wanting to take Russia back to its empire period, of wanting to return to the Soviet Union, whatever way you want to characterize it. He has been very dissatisfied and upset with the way the Soviet Union fell apart, and he wants to return Russia to some period of grandeur. And so he feels that Ukraine is really part of Russia. And he's become increasingly more brazen, shockingly brazen. He was able to annex Crimea in 2014, and there wasn't really huge enough repercussions on that. And he sees it in Russia's own interest to completely neutralize Ukraine and make it part of this sphere of influence here.
When we heard him speak yesterday, talking about the denazification of Ukraine, the demilitarization of it, basically neutering Ukraine as an independent country, and saying that he would not countenance any resistance, you did see that sense of him of wanting to leave some form of legacy. It was also quite disturbing, wasn't it?
No, it has been disturbing, and you know that Russia has complete control over its media. So with being able to control information, he's able to spin these narratives about what's going on in Ukraine. Hopefully, and from his standpoint, he's trying to convince the Russian people and the Ukrainian people that this is what is best for Russia and for them. And he's basically spewing out lies, and a lot of conflicts are about these information wars, and he feels he's been very effective in that. And so by saying that there's been threats to Russian nationals within Ukraine, he's used that as a pretext to invade. But I think this is just a really, really big risk that he's taking, because I think he's underestimating the resolve of the Ukrainian people and the information that they might be able to access that is more truthful. Whether or not he can effectively convince the Russian people, that's a question. But I think even Russians themselves are having reservations about getting involved in a full-scale conflict with their neighbor.
Yeah. How hard will Ukraine be able to resist the might of a full military invasion by Russia?
Well, I mean, Russia has tremendous power, aerial power, naval power, even ground power. They have more troops, but what they might not have is the resolve, the same type of resolve. I mean, the war in Afghanistan many decades ago was not very popular. There were very, very difficult wars that they fought against the Chechens. And so I don't know to what extent the Russian people have the resolve to support any kind of conflict where they lose large numbers of troops, where the Ukrainians are just defending everything they have. They have no choice. They're just trying to defend themselves. And from the Ukrainian standpoint, they're hoping they're going to get more weapons and missiles from the West, and with greater support, they might be able to make it more of a stalemate than I think Putin had intended. And a stalemate is not good for Putin, because that means that this really wasn't a success. And it could be something that could be destabilizing for his own leadership if this goes really wrong for him.
Yeah, and economically too. I mean, the West are now, of course, we've seen progressive sanctions. Sanctions have been applied to Russia now for many years. If the West does apply sanctions that are so severe that could destroy the Russian economy, that could really jeopardize his position and this legacy he's trying to create.
And I think that's another thing that I thought he would have calculated. I thought he was going to go as far as he could short of full-scale invasion, because he knew that the West would be more united in the application of sanctions. And that's what we're seeing. Countries are coming together to denounce the aggression, and they're putting sanctions on the financial institutions, on Russian banks. And it's going to make it really difficult for Russian banks to engage in any kind of international financial transactions, to engage in transactions using US dollars. There will be probably a ban of different exports. It could be important exports, such as high-tech products that you might need to make mobile phones, for example. Of course, Russia always has the support of China, which makes it difficult to completely isolate Russia. But I think these sanctions that are going to be employed on Russia are going to be much, much harsher than the other ones that have been used for years, that haven't really brought Russia to its knees, but have made it impossible for Russian economy to grow. And as these economic sanctions start to really hit the Russian economy, I think you might see more rumblings and more people upset at taking such a brazen move against Ukraine.
Let's talk about China's position tonight. They have said that they do not consider this an invasion. They have said no sanctions should be applied to Russia. Does China's position in this matter?
Yeah, it matters a lot. It's actually really important that Russia had China's backing. And I think when you saw with the display at the Winter Olympics that they're on the same page about this. China tends to remain incredibly neutral and almost neutral to the point that it is not helpful. And they're doing the same here. In fact, going even a step further by basically supporting Russia. And because China is such a powerful economic player, that makes it difficult to isolate Russia. And sanctions really only have an important effect if they can really isolate a country. And that's where we've seen sanctions be effective, when a country becomes so incredibly isolated financially that it forces elites to make changes. Russia and Putin have clearly identified what the risks are. I think that this is a miscalculation on Putin's part. It's going to be much more harsh, but he knows that he has the backing of China, and that is an incredibly important ally in this.
China, too, has become increasingly aggressive itself in the Asia-Pacific region. Do you think this could embolden China if they see Russia successfully take over Ukraine?
Well, I think China has become increasingly bold, as well, as you mentioned, with the way that they've been dealing with Hong Kong. And we'll see what happens with the way they deal with Taiwan. In the past, China has had a more conservative foreign policy. It's gotten increasingly aggressive under Xi Jinping. This might support ideas to be more aggressive regarding these two particular territories and just expanding its own sphere of influence. So I think we're seeing a general shift of authoritarian regimes, which in the past have really been only concerned about their own internal stability, being much more aggressive outwardly, engaging in conflicts, provoking conflicts than in the past. And that's possibly because they think they can do it. And we're seeing authoritarian learning and modeling taking place. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we may see more of that.
Natasha, appreciate your analysis as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.